Welcome to What's in a Game. On today's show, the NBA Finals deliver another classic as the Pacers defeat the Thunder to go up 2-1 in the series. Could the Pacers pull off the upset of the century? But first, Russell Westbrook opts out. Will he be leaving Denver next year, or will he have a new destination? Stay tuned. Welcome back to What's in a Game. I'm Grace Jean here with my co-host Will Jones. How are you doing today, Will, on this fine Friday morning?
I'm great. The Pacers are up in the NBA Finals, which was a surprise to me. Um, as much as I knew they could win a game in this series, I didn't think they were going to get swept. I didn't think they'd win this home game as much. I just wanted it to happen, but OKC's so good, so I have to doubt it, unfortunately. And they pulled it off, but it was really close. Like I was saying, it was going to be close. And in that fourth quarter, Pacers were able to pull away a little bit more.
Yeah, no, that game was very fun because it was like the first real like back and forth game, I think, of the series because OKC obviously led all of game 2, which was a blowout, and in game 1 they led almost the entire way until the very end, when the Pacers made their run. That was fun in its own way because you could tell like there was this tension in game 1 where like OKC kept trying to pull away, but Indy kept like keeping themselves in it, and then of course at the end they're able to like make a run and take the lead. Game 3 was a lot more back and forth. It wasn't like, within quarters back and forth, but like across quarters. So OKC I think led after 1, then Indy's bench came in and they gave them a huge spark that they kind of rolled with through the end of the half. Then OKC makes a run at the beginning of the half, and Indiana's able to keep it close, and I think it was tied after 3 quarters, or maybe OKC was up 1.
They were up a
Uh,
little bit. Yeah, I think they were up. I can't remember how much, but yeah.
yeah, and then, the 4th quarter was very, like, "Okay, like, what's gonna happen here?" Um, yeah, so I'll be very excited to talk about that game. A couple programming notes before we jump into the show. We will be back sometime next week after game 5, which I believe is Monday, so game 4 is tonight. So hopefully everybody's catching the show today before the game. This is the only game in the series that will have just one full day's rest in between the game days. Every other game will have 2 games rest in between. So game 4 is tonight, game 5 is on Monday, and game 6 will not be until Thursday. So we'll be back next week. Probably after game 5. I don't think we'll do Monday, but we might. We'll figure that out. Scheduling things. Please do us a favor and hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really helps us out with the algorithm as we try to grow the channel. And I'm just checking this out right now, Will, where we're at with our subs. We're at 957. Please help us out and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit our 1,000 sub goal before the end of the playoffs. Um, that'd be really cool. We're coming right up against it, so we need the Pacers to keep pushing OKC in this series.
Yeah.
If we're gonna make that, though, I have a sneaking suspicion that it's not gonna be until after like we do a big, oh my god, a big trade happened show
Yeah.
that
Or a GM hired
or GM
finally.
hire, right? We're still waiting on that. It's funny. Right after, I think it was right after our last show with Jeff Morton, a Bennett Durando article dropped in the Denver Post, which
Oh
is
yeah.
Stan Kroenke's favorite periodical. Um, from Bennett, where he's talking about what we do and don't know about the GM search for Denver, and his source that is close to, I wouldn't even say front office. It seems like the information has to come from someone close to ownership. Is like they're not going to have a GM this week, and lo and behold, it is Friday, and it's afternoon in Denver. Not where I'm at just yet, as maybe people can tell from my sort of morning stuffiness. Uh, there's no GM announcement, and I don't think that this would be like a late afternoon thing, but who knows?
Yeah.
So probably not going to get that until next week. But Denver does have news on the roster building front. as we find out per Mark Stein this morning that Russell Westbrook is going to indeed opt out of his player option for the upcoming 25-26 season. Will, what was your first reaction to this? And we'll break down some of the options that both Russ and Denver have in front of them.
Yeah, my first reaction was that it was completely expected. If you read Jake Coyne's offseason guide or listened to podcasts about this, he can make more money by opting out and re-signing since, the new minimum's higher every year. The salary cap goes up, so he could make more by coming back. What I wasn't sure of was how this helps the Nuggets with the repeater tax. Because I saw Jeff tweet about that. And I thought I remembered Jake writing something about that it's like a win-win even if he opts out and re-signs, that it can help in some way. But I'm not certain about that. I could be wrong.
No, it's more just staying under the repeater tax. I'm not sure. So one of the things that we've discussed in our off-season shows, and we're going to have a lot more on this kind of like cap minutia so that fans can understand what the sort of both tools and limitations are at Denver's disposal. One of the things with veteran minimum contracts is that the player gets more money after like a certain number of years of service, and Russ is like well into that past that threshold, he and DJ, to where, for example, this season when you sign a veteran minimum contract, the player gets like $3.3 million, but the cap hit and also the amount that's counted towards the luxury tax, which determines additional money that the team has to pay toward the league if they're paying a certain amount above it in salary, is only $2.3 million. So I'm not sure
Here,
if
Jeff
maybe.
responded.
Oh, go ahead.
He said, since the repeater tax takes hold on one of the new league years, on July 1st, the Nuggets have $3 million less on the cap because Russ is opted out once the new league year starts.
Oh, interesting. But I would imagine it's interesting that they count it then and not at the end of the year when everybody's books are filled.
Yeah, he just says when the new league year starts, the Nuggets have $3 million less to add to the 2.5 times repeater tax penalty.
Yeah, so there's that. And I think there's also a possibility that the player option on the vet minimum isn't the same. It doesn't count, it doesn't give the team that same flexibility as if they just signed a new vet minimum, to where maybe this is what Jeff is referring to here. So if Russ does sign a new vet minimum, I think the vet minimum, additionally, it's gone up because the salary cap is going to go up by 10%. So everything is scaled to the salary cap. So the vet minimum will also go up. So it'll probably be closer to almost $4 billion that Russ gets. And then only like 2.6 million that counts towards our cap. Whereas if he had opted in, that player option is scaled to the money that he got and not the amount that it was on our cap. So I think that's what the amount is. So maybe they save a little bit on luxury taxes. That's just a little bit of cap minutia to where it makes sense for both parties for us to have opted out, even if he were going to stay to Denver, which we're not saying is necessarily going to happen, but it is still an option. The other thing, Jay Coyne put out that Stat Squatch, our guest from last week, put out a tweet with a couple of different options if Denver wants to re-sign Russ, that include the 1-year minimum, as I just mentioned, that has the according to him, it's a $2.3 million cap hit. So it sounds like the cap hit hasn't increased that much from last year. And you can also give Russ a 20% raise on the minimum using non-bird rights. We're going to be throwing these terms around all summer. There's a little bit of an echo, Will. I'm hearing a minimum there, or an echo there. Sorry. What was I saying? So there are a couple of different tiers of things that you can use to re-sign your own players, and they're called bird rights because it was kind of the rule was originally like for Larry Bird, who had been with the Celtics for some amount of time, and they wanted to be able to give him some amount of money, right? One of the reasons that Bruce Brown left when he did is that Denver only had his early bird rights that gave him the opportunity to that gave them the opportunity to give him a 40% raise on what he was already making, but obviously Indiana gives him way more than that would have been. Um, and that's because he'd only been here 2 years. We have Russ's non-bird rights that allows you to give any player that you're retaining a 20% raise on what they made, and Russ has obviously only been here for 1 year, so that's why it's the lower number. So they could give Russ that. That would result in a $4.4 million cap hit, which is not great for Denver because we are again scraping up against that second apron. Um, and the last option would be Denver giving Russ the taxpayer MLE, which is up to a $5.7 million cap hit, depending on how much of that mid-level exception or MLE you use on Russ, which would obviously foreclose the opportunity to give that to another player. So it kind of depends on what the options are there. And so a lot of different things on the menu for both Russ and Denver. That's just the Denver side, right? Question I'm gonna ask you in terms of, like, what will happen. Russ probably has a couple of options ahead of him outside of what Denver can offer, or at least, like, theoretically, because we don't know what other teams might be interested, but do you think Russ will be back next year?
I kind of feel like he will.
Do you think that's more because of what will be offered to him by other teams? Or
I think it's more
yeah,
about like the opportunity still. Like I don't think things went sour enough in Denver for him to lead me to believe he really
to
wants
just leave to
to
leave.
leave. Yeah, he could be offered more money. Like I do believe he
Yeah.
outplayed the minimum for sure.
Oh, I mean,
Um, yeah,
unquestionably, yeah.
so but he's already made so much money, but it's like you can't blame anyone for taking as
No,
much
not at
money
all.
as you can. So that makes it difficult, but I do think he likes Denver. I think he felt like the fans were happy with what he was bringing, like especially the home crowd. I think they showed him a lot of love. I don't know how much he paid attention to like media stuff because they're a little more hot and cold on Russ, of course. But I think playing with Jokic is still one of the best opportunities to try to get a championship, besides him trying to like go to OKC and have his little swan song.
Everyone talks about
And
OKC, and I just don't see Russ as a Thunder like, I don't know why Presti would be interested in that, if I'm being
I don't
completely
know
honest
either,
with you.
besides just vibes, besides
It's
just,
just the connection that he has to the
yeah.
franchise and, yeah, vibes,
But it's
but
so true.
that's
Like
just
he
yeah.
would not play on that
That's
team. There's
like
so
he's, like,
many
not
people ahead of him on the
yeah,
list that it's like it
yeah.
doesn't make any sense. But he could, just come back, play in the regular season for them,
Can you
like in
imagine
spots.
the discourse if Thunder players were like, "I can't believe Daigneault is playing Russ over Aaron Wiggins."
Yeah, it's just so messy. But
This
what other contender could he maybe go to that could
So,
offer him a bit more, like the
the thing
Heat
is
or
I'm not
something?
like, depending on how you define contender, if you're defining it as loosely as possible, some of the
Yeah.
teams that I've seen being bandied about, and I don't know if these teams are actually interested or if people are just suggesting it, or suggesting that they might be interested because these are teams that are desperate for starting-ish caliber point guards are Dallas and Sacramento. I don't
Mhm.
necessarily think that Russ is a great fit either place, if I'm being totally honest. I don't think that he's like the answer for them, but those are also weird franchises that you could see like making a weird decision there. Dallas would have access to, I believe, some portion of the full mid-level exception. I don't think it would be the entire thing because of how close they are to the first apron. So I'm just thinking about, like, what's the competition in terms of what teams, would be interested, and Dallas right now, they have no room below the first apron, so they couldn't offer him the full mid-level. They could probably just offer him the taxpayer mid-level, which is up to what we could offer too, but I don't know if Denver wants to use their taxpayer mid-level on this, or maybe they do because they just want to run it back, and I don't know that they would use it on anything useful anyway. Sacramento, on the other hand, I think has a bit cleaner of a cap sheet. So they are well below the first apron. And they've got 10 players signed. So they could offer us the full mid-level exception, and you could like that's a franchise you have no freaking idea what they're gonna do. They didn't choose Luka Doncic on draft night. They traded away Tyrese Haliburton. They traded away De'Aaron Fox, and now they need a point guard. Uh,
I
so they might
just
give Russ the full mid-level exception. Like I could actually see that
if
happening.
he really wants that extra money, he can go there, but I feel like that's not a good situation for him.
I mean, it's a lot of extra money though. So for me, it's like I think that the situation in Denver is good enough that if the money is the same, he'll stay. But I don't think it's bad like it was like in the Clippers where it's like minimum. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna leave and go somewhere else. Even though, well, no, because actually he opted in and it was like a whole thing. I don't think the Clippers wanted him back. So there's like some mutual stuff there, but different dynamic. But I don't think that it was like good enough to where Russ would turn down 4 times the money somewhere else.
Yeah.
Is it good
Well,
enough that he would turn down 2 times the money somewhere else if it meant that he was further away from his family? This
yeah.
is the thing that we got in the articles that came out in the aftermath of the Malone and Booth firings, that he was, like, visiting his family in LA on weekends, and I was just like, "Okay, whatever." But apparently it was, like, an issue for some players in the locker room, which is the only reason that this kinda story gets out. Um, so like, I don't think he's gonna go to an Eastern Conference team, for example. And maybe Dallas is less attractive for that reason, but like Sacramento is the same distance, like flight wise, or less. It's less because that's like a I don't know hour and a half flight as opposed to I don't know was it 2 hours from Denver to LA? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, so that I think that's also a factor, and maybe that's why those are the two teams that are being kind of thrown around
Mhm.
and not others is that factor as well.
Snoozer, how are you doing? Thanks for joining. He said he thinks Russ could be disappointing on another team or will end up disappointing. And I do wonder, do you think GMs around the league are attuned to the Jokic effect, and how much are they thinking, well, Russ outperformed that because he's with Jokic, he has good chemistry with him. When he played with the starters, he was good. I don't know if he can kind of bring that to our team.
Um, I think this is gonna be the ultimate case study of that question.
Yeah, that's going to
Honestly,
be
like,
interesting.
genuinely, because if you look at Russ's production last season, um, what way outplayed the minimum. Like, I think made himself one of the better taxpayer MLE candidates on the market, if not the best one, in that range. I wouldn't go so far as to say that a team would be willing to take the risk of giving him a full MLE unless they're Sacramento being Sacramento. Um, but just objectively, like, oh, of all the guys that were on minimums or taxpayer MLEs last year, who outplayed their contract the most is probably him and like Gary Trent Jr. just because he made a lot of shots, right? Similar, like I said, to Malik Beasley the year before. Um, if so, like objectively, like if it were not Russ, like if it was any other player, I think that player is like, oh, that player's definitely gone. Like, there's no reason that you and I should be having this conversation of like, oh, will he be back in Denver next year? Like, probably not if it weren't Russ. Um, on the other hand, if you see a team that's like, oh, this guy like gave them like $15 million of value, like fifth starter to sixth man kind of money of value last year, and that's what we're gonna give him, then you're like, okay, nobody understands the Jokic effect. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh so I think there's like a sliding scale of outcomes here, and we're gonna find out, and we'll definitely I think that's a good framework to sort of analyze whatever the ultimate outcome of this is. Um,
Russ may not be the best like case study for it though, just because he's older and like already has such a long
That's true.
reputation
That's
among the league.
true.
But because I feel like if you're
It's one of those things where
younger,
that factor, if you have all of those factors and the fact that it's Russ and his long career and he has this reputation, like people know, like this is like we know what this player is, and then he still gets the bump after that, like that would be, I think, the ultimate. Like I think if Russ gets a, even if it was Sacramento, if he got a full MLE, I think that's even more impressive in terms of like the Jokic bump than KCP getting $60 million on his last deal because I think
yeah,
KCP was like playing closer to that level, um,
I mean Russ
and
was
was younger, like substantially younger. So
yeah Russ was almost out of the league just by reputation, like almost
yeah,
unfairly, I would say. Like I don't think that that was true. It's just
yeah.
a
And
lot of the
again, like
perception.
the reason that we're talking about like will he be back next year is because I think Denver has reason to want him back. I think that he added value to the team, but will do you want Russ back? And if you do you have a ceiling on what you would offer in terms of what Denver's options are? Um,
Oh man,
yeah, to get him
I-
back.
I'd still just give him the minimum again. I think anything else other than that is not so great. Like we don't have to go fully into detail on Ryan's last pod where he was talking about PWAT and the CB extensions possibly, but he just had a sentiment that he hopes that the Nuggets tried to get the best deals as possible for them and buck the trend of giving early extensions or like showing the players they're going to pay them a little more because they're such a great organization or whatever the hell mindset that they have, and be a little bit more, play
Shrewd.
hardball a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I only want Russ on the minimum. Sorry if that's like offensive to Russ or Russ stands or whatever.
I mean, forget offensive. Like, let's say another team offers him well, they don't have the non-bird rights. So that's the thing is like I'm thinking in the sliding scale is minimum to taxpayer MLE. I would not love if we had to give him the taxpayer MLE, but again, like I just don't trust that they're going to do
No, we
anything
can't do that.
better with that. I would like them to sign restroom minimum and do something useful with the
Yes.
taxpayer MLE. But to you, is the taxpayer MLE a red line? Like you're like, no, it's not going to be that.
I think
It's
you,
either minimum or at worst, it's going to be the non-bird rights, which unless like just as like a math thing, they will not be able to sign someone to I think the taxpayer MLE and sign another minimum guy if that's already the case, even if Russ takes a minimum, even more the case if we have to do the non-bird rights with the bigger cap hit, if Dario is still on the books.
right.
Like
Yeah.
that's just not even we might not have 15 guys on the roster next year because of that. So,
I just want to use
yeah.
the exception for another depth piece if possible. And a lot of those names aren't very persuasive in terms of how much impact they can make. Like I look at some of those options and I'm just, not that excited about it, but it's going to be better than Dario who just didn't play, unfortunately.
Oh,
Um
well, yeah, of course,
yeah,
but I'm saying
so
but that's not up to us. Dario has a
yeah,
player
exactly.
option,
Yeah.
right?
I'm just operating on the optimistic side of he's not going to be back and just hoping we have that slot open, but of course that may not happen.
I don't
But
know. Your optimism knows no bounds, Will. This guy has a free $5 million sitting in front of him, and you're asking him to close the suitcase and walk away.
man, like you want to just sit on the bench for a whole season and do nothing or go do something with your life and play basketball while you still can somewhere
Or
else.
you opt in and force them to buy you out.
Oh,
Like
that's true too. God
like
damn it.
he's got
Forgot
all the
about that one.
leverage. Um, so it sounds like we're both in agreement that we want Russ back. There are some people that disagree, and I think we should pay credence to some of those arguments. Russ is pretty volatile, both as a scorer and as a just he's not a steady presence off the bench, right? Um, he was steadiest when he was playing, starter level minutes with Jokic. And so the question is like, is he able to scale down his role? If, for example, you wanted to create a bigger role for a Jalen Pickett or, create even more minutes for Peyton Watson. Um, I think. there's merit to that. I really do, especially because of a lot of what we've been talking about over the last year when it comes to production and being different than impact and fit. And so there's an opportunity perhaps that some people see for addition by subtraction, which is why they would be willing to just let Russ walk, even if it was like the minimum. I disagree with that for a couple of reasons. I think even if they brought Bruce back, there's a serious motor deficit on this roster. Um, both in the regular season and the playoffs, like it's just a thing, but especially regular season, the level of caring, and you could say it was just like the whole thing with the coach and the GM. I don't fully buy that, but even if you did, um, the fact that we had one high motor athlete in our rotation, it just stood in such stark contrast to all the other good teams in the league. Except maybe the Celtics, who none of them are really like super high motor guys. Even like Derek White has sort of like scaled down, sort of similar to Christian, like after he's taken on that starter role. He was kind of that last year, but you see like championship hangover comes for us all, right? Um, and so I worry about just not having that. I think that is important, just in terms of getting through the regular season, but also just picking other guys up. I just worry that not having anybody who is willing to like keep running and like fly around and all that
Yeah.
means we're just going to be a really like drab team. I think there's this perception that the reason that the Nuggets only won 50 games last year is because of Rust. I'm just like, guys, there were so
What?
many phases of this season where Russ, like, saved our asses, and, you can point to some isolated incidents of, like, the last game against Minnesota in the regular season, um, and, like, this or that clutch game, but it was, like, one of the reason that Jokic wanted Russ is because he wanted a veteran point guard who could fill in when Jamal was, like, out or, like, bad to start the year. So I think it would be a mistake to just be without that. I don't know how much Jokic wants to play with Jalen Pickett. We're gonna see if that changes next year. Pickett has been around the team longer. Um, hopefully he's better
I
next
just,
year.
I mean,
It's just like I don't know why you would want fewer like guys.
yeah.
Besides just like there's this idea that like, okay, was it Malone's fault that guys weren't getting minutes, or was it because we had too many guys? Like I think you have to sort of pick a lane there. Um so those are my kind of initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think Russ, despite his inconsistencies, is one of the only guys who has his skill set on the team at his position, especially.
Yeah.
And that's pretty valuable. And usually he outweighs the bad. At least he did last season for me. In the playoffs, like I don't think he lost us the series versus the Thunder or anything. And he may
Yeah.
have been like not as impactful as the Clippers series,
I
but
mean, in the Clippers series, he was amazing.
yeah,
So it was like you could say the playoffs were a wash, and like again for a minimum guy, like what else can you ask for than just being like a net neutral in the playoffs?
yeah. So I really do want to keep him. The point guard position's already pretty shallow. We need even more ball handlers than we already did with him and Pickett and Murray. So losing him is just another one down that we're already going to have to replace that, which you could do like a Dennis Schroeder type thing.
Can you? Like, the only tools at our disposal are a minimum and
yeah. Well,
a
you'd have to pay
taxpayer MLE, and you'd
you'd
have
have to
to
pay
assume.
more for him and then use the minimum on like a different kind of other role player or something.
Well, I don't know that you can even get Schroeder. Like, I'm not
Yeah,
sure
that's true.
Detroit doesn't wanna just keep him, and even if they didn't, maybe somebody else offers him the full MLE or more. He was a full MLE player on his last contract, and I don't did he underplay that value? I don't think so, right?
Yeah, but it's going
What
to be
like,
like,
Brooklyn traded him because he was playing too well.
yeah, that's true. That was so funny. But then he like wasn't very good on the Warriors. That was so weird. What a weird season for him. But
Yeah,
him
but then he was
and
fine on the Pistons as that
yeah,
backup. So
but like maybe Dinwiddie, maybe I don't know. There's other names out there, but they're not like
right.
all that exciting.
Yeah. No, I exactly. I think that the point of Russ last summer from the front office's perspective, separate from what we just discussed about Jokic, was like, okay, Russ is this upside play. We got the upside. Like, uh, if you're going with somebody else, you could say, okay, we're going new direction, we're going steady hand. But I think I mean, part of that is like, are you trying to if you get a steadier player, you're just probably never ever gonna play Jalen Pickett. To which, like at that point, I'm just like, I don't really understand what the point of that pick was. Yeah, it's a weird situation with our point guard room, and part of the problem is that we don't have creation or ball handling at any other position on ball. We just
Yeah,
don't. Outside of AG sometimes, and it's a weird roster construction issue. It's almost like honestly, like if AG were like still like the kind of on ball guy that he was in Orlando, which he shouldn't be because he's taken on a different role here in Denver, or MPJ or Christian were any kind of really like you actually believe it's happening, developing creator or ball handler, then this would be a completely different conversation, but they're not. Like we just don't have this function on another um part of the roster right now. And so I think going from Russ to somebody else is a downgrade on a roster that's already like bereft of this skill. Um so that's another interesting sort of angle to take is like if they were going a different direction if they wanted to break up the core, which I don't advocate for necessarily, to change that fact that this would be a completely different conversation about Russ, like entirely coming back because it was just it's the thing with Russ is like if you're a team that like I don't think Sacramento makes all that much sense despite they don't have a technically a real point guard, but they've got other guys who can handle the ball, it becomes this diminishing marginal return. But on a team like Denver, where it's like literally like, okay, it's Jamal Murray and then nobody else, like in terms of on ball creation, like we really kind of need that
hmm
more than other teams do. So I think that Denver would be in a tough spot if Russ just left. Other people don't necessarily agree with that. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Snoozer asks, "Isn't Dario our taxpayer mid-level exception?"
When you sign a player to a taxpayer mid-level exception or a mid-level exception in the previous year, that doesn't count against you being able to use that exception again in the next season. It's just about your ability to use the taxpayer mid-level is just where your salary cap sheet is that year, as long as you didn't already use it that off season.
So you
So
get a
you would be
new
able
like
to,
level of
yeah,
exception depending on where you are on the
right. And
scale.
it doesn't matter if you used that exception last year. Yeah.
Cool.
It's actually unfortunate because when you think about like if Denver had been able to sign guys on taxpayer mid levels that played like around that contract instead of like Bruce like way outplayed it and then had to leave. Reggie probably played like to that level to be honest, but like they just didn't want him anymore, so they salary dumped him, whatever. We could have been accumulating these like $5 million contracts on the roster that we could have put together to make an actual trade package, but didn't just a thought there. And obviously Dario just like did not play to the level at all. But we might have him on the roster anyway.
Yeah.
We're gonna see what happens with that. All right, that's a lot of talk about Russ. Anything else that you want to say on this topic before we jump into the finals?
Um. No, I think we're good.
Okay, sweet. All right, let's talk about Game 3 of the NBA Finals. So Indiana wins this game. What was it, 116 to 107? Um, that was a really fun game. And not just because Indiana won, but especially because Indiana won. Well, you were at a concert during this game, weren't you?
Yes, I couldn't watch the game. I was at Red Rocks at a wonderful concert. I was so happy, but I was checking the score as it was going, and It was very close. And then
Yes.
I checked the score after it was already over, saw the Pacers won. I was super
Ooh.
stoked. And then I looked at the box score and I was like, Mathurin had 27 points off the bench? What?
That's Benedict Mathurin, Haitian Canadian who led an NBA Finals game in scoring. So
Yes. And
Pacers are up. We are back.
also, let me say, I mean, I
Yeah,
knew Mathurin was a U of A player.
that's true too.
Didn't know TJ McConnell was, though, for some weird reason.
Oh, was he really? Okay.
Wasn't he? I thought you
TJ
said something
McConnell?
about that.
I did?
Yeah.
No, I
Am I
am not
blind?
aware of. I think I remember Jason Timpf talking about
Yeah, he was.
Mathurin being U of A.
Yeah, TJ McConnell
Yeah,
was. So
look
you
at
have
that.
these U of A players
A lot of
playing really
Wildcats.
well on the Pacers, and so
Pick a
was
more
AG.
mascot.
Um,
Yes, and so was Zeke.
Fit.
I always
Yeah,
think about that.
actually, I'm a CU grad, but I had grandparents in Arizona, and my brother used to go to the basketball camps at the University of Arizona. So I've always been like a fan of the Wildcats, weirdly enough. So I'm happy for those dudes, even though Mathurin, I learned some other interesting things about him. Where I mean, I saw the interview during his draft time where he was saying LeBron needed to prove to him that he was better than him. I don't know if you remember that.
I've seen the quote circulating.
Yeah. And then someone asked Miles Turner after the game if Mathurin ever smiles, and he was like, "No, he never cracks a smile in the locker room or anything. He's just serious." And I was like, "Whoa, that's interesting."
That's
He's all
interesting.
business.
He seems to have like a resting, like half smile all the time, though. I don't know. He doesn't have like a resting scowl or anything like that, but it's
Yeah, for
interesting
sure.
that he is personality wise, apparently, all business. Couple of different dynamics that went on in this game. This was the bench game for Indiana. Like
Yeah.
the starters were not exactly winning their minutes, even in the first half. But you look at the stretches with McConnell and Mathurin on the floor, particularly, even in the stretches without Haliburton on the floor at all. They were dominating. They were absolutely dominating the Thunder in those minutes. And, when Benedict Mathurin goes off for 27, you can understand, part of why that is. But I thought TJ McConnell also played a major role in that too. Um, I thought the story of this game was really like we're going to talk a lot about what the Pacers were able to do offensively, which I think is what kind of propelled them to the win. But the more impressive part of this game to me was the Pacers defense,
Yes.
particularly on SGA. Um, I this is a possession that I think a lot of people have sort of cited as really good defense, especially for Tyrese Haliburton. The if you could pull up the SGA travel possession. So I believe here that he's got Nembhard on him. They were doing a guard to guard thing with Dort, right? Kind of bumps Nembhard. Then Hallie comes in and he's pretty aggressive on the. He's trying to like not veer switch it? Like, I don't know what they're doing, but it's like a really interesting defensive chemistry that
Hmm.
he and Nemhard have here,
I was noticing
to
this
where
too.
Hallie is like, "Okay, I'm gonna get all the way in front of him, and then Nemhard's gonna fully recover, and then Hallie is going to, like, it's almost like Hallie is veer switching, but
Yeah.
he's just recovering back to Dort." It's very interesting, I
As soon
think,
as Shea
over
gives up
here.
his dribble, he's able to recover to Dort, but he got the travel luckily. But I did notice the Pacers doing stuff like this. Um,
Like, throughout the playoffs, or
throughout this last game,
okay.
just because, and it almost was Thunder like in
Mhm.
ways like they were. I agree with you. The defense was a story for them. They were swarming. They were running around. Like the intensity was crazy. I think
Yeah.
Nemhard and someone else had 3 fouls in the first half. Like they were like, yeah, some of the times the fouls were there, but they were just being aggressive and like physical, running around. They were on
I
those
think
covered.
Neesmith fouled out of the game. I was
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
it was Neesmith.
confused.
Yeah,
I was confused why Nemhard also had 3 fouls in the first half. There were 3
Yeah.
Pacers with 3 fouls in the first half.
So they were just,
Neesmith, Siakam, and Nemhard.
which seems like a bad idea almost, but I thought it was good that they were doing that and being aggressive. They looked more intense than the Thunder did on defense. And they were doing stuff like this, like leaving, if it was like a screen like that on the perimeter, leaving like whoever was popping and just taking the ball handler, like 2 on the ball handler almost, and
Yeah,
not,
but then also recovering, but like they were not just
yeah,
ignoring shooters in this
no,
game, and that's something that really stood out to me is like they were trying to not run everybody off the line, but they were like, we're gonna get all up in you and like try to keep the shot from going up. There were multiple shot clock violations for OKC in this game.
yeah.
Shot clock violations are my second favorite defensive stops for a team. Nemhard was guarding SGA. Thank you, Mel Gibson. Like Lou Dort would pushing him, and SGA was frustrated. Yeah, SGA was finally getting guarded almost like he would by his own teammates.
But
Um,
yeah, and
and it really tired him out.
I thought they were just kind of like selling out sometimes on the ball handler, and if they could recover, cool. If they couldn't, they kind of live with it. And so sometimes maybe intentionally or not, where sometimes the popping shooter was open, relatively speaking, and would shoot it like Chet. Lou Dort on some. Lou Dort hit some shots.
Yeah.
Chet missed some shots. I thought it worked out really well for the Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, right? They won. If you could pull up the Hallie breakaway steal, there's some also the defensive kind of chemistry between Nemhard and Miles Turner came up multiple times in this game as well. So,
Yes.
uh, okay, so we got a really hard blitz here between um with Miles and Nemhard as Chet is rolling and Hallie's the low man and he just comes in and reads that pass
Yeah. He's
perfectly,
just,
and I'm not sure why this was the pass. And like obviously you're passing to Chet there. But I feel like Chet should have rolled harder. Like I think this was more on Chet than Shea.
yeah, he's
He should
like,
have gotten to where the open space is faster because I think Hallie would have had to just tag him if he'd been like at this point closer to the free throw line.
yeah, like he
Um,
could have gone right to the nail and it would have been a lot easier. And then he could have easily just hit the corner 3 off that on the short
yeah,
roll. But I think he was like
and he
wanting to
did in
take a
other parts
3.
of this game.
Yeah, he
But
definitely did.
I feel like Hallie's sort of timing on these improved. It's not like he had a bunch of different steals or anything, but they were just really good on tagging and rotating behind that in this game.
Yeah.
There was another blitz where with again Nemhard and Miles Turner that tied SGA up for a jump ball. That they were incredibly aggressive on him at the point of attack, and this was it a career postseason high in turnovers for SGA? We talked about how the Thunder sort of win this turnover margin on both ends of the floor, and a large part of that is because SGA is such a low turnover player. But when you've got one guy who's got the ball the entire game, obviously this stuff is going to happen. Especially when you're facing a defense as aggressive as Indiana was actually being in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were really good. SJ, yeah, forcing him to make some interesting passes. He did have a couple like good ones, but there were definitely some bad turnovers, which I wondered about in this playoffs if anyone could force him into some bad passes because he's not known as like a passing wizard or anything like that. But I haven't really seen it as much. But
Yeah.
you kind of need to put this defensive pressure
Again,
to
that
like do
one I
something
don't
like
think was
that.
a bad pass. I think it was more on
Yeah,
Chet's
that's true.
positioning. A lot of his turnovers when I went through them, like they weren't necessarily bad passes, although there were maybe one or two where like TJ or Hallie reads like the skip pass and picks that off. But other than
Yeah,
those, it was a lot of just like where it was like the Thunder swarming and being aggressive and
yeah.
just like taking the ball
It was,
from him.
yeah,
But it was the Pacers. Okay, so let's talk about the Pacers offense in this game, which is going to be the bulk of this show. I thought the entire sort of ethos of the Pacers offense in this game was touch the paint and something good's going to come out of it. And that I think was a huge departure for in terms of approach for certain Pacers compared to previous games. For example, I think Siakam was getting pushed off his spots a lot in previous games, and also the Thunder, I think, did a much better job of, forcing steals on those entry passes, for example. I thought Haliburton was way, way, way more aggressive on his drives in this game, and we're going to have a lot of examples of that.
Yeah, but before we get to the specific examples, I did think they were doing some crazy dump off passes and off of like cuts,
Yeah.
like driving, they're getting swarmed, trying to hit a cutter. It
These are
worked.
the kinds of passes that were getting picked off in games 1
Yes,
and 2, and that's why I have in my notes here, like, I just don't think the Thunder were here with the same intensity that the Pacers were.
that is a little bit of my worry about the rest of the series. I'm enjoying it for now, but we'll see. I know the Thunder can play better, but those are also the passes that they're turning over throughout the whole playoffs, and especially like the
Yeah.
Nuggets. And the fact that I saw the Pacers being able to drive in and cut and pass and swinging the ball and dumping it off, sometimes it led to turnovers, but a lot of the times it worked. I thought was pretty impressive and notable for sure.
Yeah, and we're gonna definitely talk about those instances, but I don't think it can be ignored. Going into this game, and I think we talked about it on our last show, the Thunder were 1 and 2 in game 3s. And the Pacers were 0 and 3 in game 3. So I was like, who's going to be the worst game 3 team? And it turned out to be the Thunder. I do think that the Thunder's defense tends to let up in these games, this first road game of the series, especially. And there's like, that's the reason that their point differential is so different home compared to road, is I think it's, in our series, it seemed like it was the offense, but that was sort of like the entire series, with the exception of the 2 blowout games. But their defense, like, really varies between their home games and the road games, I think.
It's true.
And a lot of that's defensive intensity. So we're gonna show you a lot of passes in this game that otherwise I think get picked off. But I do want to give Indiana credit for being more aggressive in how they create the advantages that they were capitalizing on in this game. But there were a couple of examples here that were clear, like, okay, the Thunder are just not themselves in this game, which included, like, there were multiple leak outs by Nemhard and Mathurin, and I think Neesmith too, just having to get fouled in transition because they were going to get easy layups. And yeah, the Thunder do that sometimes, but these were like, oh, like they probably could have gotten an and one there. Like that was like wide open in a way that you don't expect. The Thunder to sort of struggle with their transition defense of all the things. And then there was like this big Obi Toppin offensive rebound in the clutch as
Hmm.
well off a Haliburton miss. So that was just like a weird Thunder defensive game. But let's talk about Tyrese Haliburton, because he was incredibly comfortable against against the Thunder today, just I think in all aspects. And the first way that you saw that was with these floaters and drops. So let's go first to the one over J-Dub. Uh, I thought this was like the earliest one in the game. And on this possession, so Halliburton, kind of pick and roll with Miles. It's not the best shot of the possession. Like he could have passed back to Miles there, which is this is like what you'd expect Halliburton to do. Chet's not really recovering. Maybe he reads Caruso's going. He could have passed to Obi if that's what he thought. But then he goes for the floater. It's not the best shot on the possession, but it is there, and he made it.
I mean, that is a difficult floater. He's so far away. I mean, I bet Chet was not expecting him to take a
No,
floater right there.
I wasn't. I wasn't expecting to take it or make it, right? This is outside the paint. But it seemed like, okay, Halburn's trying to get himself going here, and I think that was important.
Yes.
Now there's definitely, I think, good and bad ways to analyze whether a player is being aggressive enough. We talked about this on our last show. Like my thing was, I thought he was passing back way too soon on on these possessions when he wasn't really creating an advantage. He hadn't touched the paint. There was that possession where he gets the switch on SGA that you mentioned. You're like, he picked up his dribble off that screen for no reason. He wasn't playing like that in this game. The next one is the floater over SGA. Uh,
Yes, gotcha.
if you could play that one too. They went at SGA, I think, a lot in this game. So they get the SGA switch, and then Hallie sort of just rejects the screen on the I guess this is kind of double drag, but it seemed more like kind of two separate kind of actions going on here. They just got the
Yeah,
SGA switch, and then Hallie goes at him one on one, and then
yeah,
hits that floater again over Chet. Still doesn't quite touch the paint, but, like, he goes after his shot. He seems comfortable from that range, right?
yeah. And it was a lot more open. Like, and that was like a good. Like he just went right to it. Like he knew what he was gonna do. Versus,
Mhm.
when he's driving in on that last example.
And
Um,
that's not to say he's predetermining his moves, but he knows what he wants to do on that possession
Yeah,
in
that one just
terms of
seemed
yeah,
so much more in flow. Whereas the other one, he could have passed, pulled up a little early.
yeah.
Chet was right there. Who knows what he could have done? But this one just seemed, and he already hit. I don't know if this one, which one was first time wise, but if he's hitting that floater, then he's in rhythm on it. So
I think the J-Dub one was first. I think I went in order here. I might
okay,
have. The next one was over Caruso. And I wanted to point this one out because I felt like Haliburton was the most comfortable of like against anyone that he was against Caruso. So this is attacking off the catch and then going for the floater over iHeart. iHeart's probably like, man, I'm supposed to be frustrating people with that floater. Uh,
yeah, you should know iHeart that they're gonna go to the long floater.
this was again the Alex Caruso that I expected to see. This is regular season Alex Caruso, which is
What do you do here?
like a good, even great defender, but not like, "Oh my god, I can't do anything with this guy." Like he kind of almost gives up on this play and is like, "Okay, we're just like late switching I heart here and it's whatever." Whereas with somebody else, I feel like he's going after the ball here, but he's caught flat-footed and yeah, Hallie's able to drive on him pretty
That's
comfortably.
it's already hard guarding anyone on a closeout, but like he was kind of out of position, and by the
Yeah.
time he got his hips turned around,
Yeah.
Halliburton's able to
And
like use
again,
his speed.
he's not the quickest footed defender. Like he can be good when it's in isolation, stand still, that kind of thing, but he can be attacked off the catch by a good driver, which I think Halliburton is. I have a question for you, Will. Okay, maybe I'll ask it um after the next clip. But okay, first question. Why was OKC dropping so much more in Halliburton in this game than in the last games? Because I didn't even have to go back to the film for games 1 and 2 because I remember clocking it in both games, like, wow, OKC really doesn't want Hallie to get to his pull-up 3. Like, so Chet is, like, coming way out. They're switching way earlier on these screens. So
Hmm.
why so much drop on
They
Halliburton in
really
particular in
shouldn't.
this game?
It was working better in the second game, you know, blitzing him and forcing him to just pass, not even to like a good advantage type of play or continuation from an advantage, just like giving up the ball and the Pacers not being able to do much or having to run something else out of that. I don't know what they were doing. Maybe I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
I don't either. Maybe the reason that OKC hasn't been good as good in game threes isn't just the energy, but Daigneault's just like, I'm just gonna try shit.
Snoozer is suggesting were they exhausted trying to save energy?
Maybe. That's a good point. Maybe Dagnall, DA Adelman talked about using zone to try to manage players throughout the game and get players through a game. Maybe that's how Dagnall wanted to help get Chet through the game. Especially you could see it, especially after 2 games of already kind of playing a lot in these one center looks managing Chet's energy throughout the game, so they had him dropping a lot more than he had in previous games, which actually contributes to this wear down narrative, which I think is interesting. Okay, so the last drive here that I have from Halliburton is this. I thought should have been an and one where he's driving on Case and Wallace at the end of a possession. Uh, Maybe not. I mean, SGA does maintain
The float.
verticality, but this was just a tough shot. Uh,
Yeah.
this reminds me of one that he hit actually over the Knicks in overtime in one of those games, where I was
Hmm.
just like, "Oh, I was not expecting that to go in," and Josh Hart was looking at him like he was also not expecting it to go.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I think uh making these kinds of shots through contact is a way that Hallie could leverage his strength as a driver. And so my question to you, Will, who is a better driver, Tyrese Haliburton or Anthony Edwards?
Tyrese has a little bit more speed and maybe a threat of passing out of it, where teams have to be more conscious of that. That if he's driving, he could be kicking. Whereas I feel like with Ant, especially in the playoffs, teams are going to try to make Ant make the pass and hope that it leads to a bad play or turnover, because he's not as known to do that. But like raw downhill speed, like strength, and just like the vertical spacing that he has even off his own dribble is insane with Ant.
That's true. That
So I'd
gotta
still
think about
say
the vertical
probably
spacing.
Ant, and like the fact that he can dunk over people, pretty much anyone.
True. I've seen
Um,
Hallie dunk over nobody, but not over people.
yeah. What
Yeah.
about Donovan Mitchell?
Yeah, I
Better.
mean, I'm not asking if Hallie's the best driver in the game. I don't think either of these guys is. I
Yeah.
think SGA is still the best driver in the game,
Mm.
just because of the variety of things that he can do. It's just
Aaron,
that
just the
his body
pure
control is insane.
finishing and
I just thought it was an
versatility.
interesting question because going through the film of this game, I was just so impressed with Tyrese Haliburton's drives, and he's just not consistent with it. So I wouldn't actually put him above Anthony Edwards. I think you have to be consistent in using your ability, and not that Ant is, but he's definitely more consistent about it than Tyrese. And I think they're different kinds of drivers. There's this I live in the Bay Area. I follow the Golden State Valkyries, and they have a couple of their offense is very predicated on drive and kick, and so they have a lot of different kinds of drivers um on the team. So I was just thinking about
I
this
want to.
question because Hallie sort of reminds me a bit of this rookie Carla Late,
I really want
who
to watch them and her, the
uh
Valkyries, more.
oh, the Valkyries,
Yeah.
yeah. No, they're awesome. They're super fun.
Yeah.
Super fun expansion team. But yeah, she's very nimble on her feet and like can be a little bit crafty. So she's probably closer to not closer, but like would remind you more of SGA than Hallie, but definitely more of Hallie than like Ant in that sense. So that's why I was thinking about this question about like what does it take to be the best driver? Um, would you prefer somebody like Giannis or somebody like Shea? Um, in terms
Mm.
of like the craftiness and the body
Oh.
control and just the variety of things that you could do to opponents. But I thought Hallie's driving is really important because he has been struggling with Dort in this series, and honestly, I didn't see too much of him cooking Dort off the dribble either in pick and roll or one on one, like off the catch, whatever. There was maybe one pick and roll where like Dort gets clipped on the screen and whatever, but also I was just like, he probably gets that offensive foul call in a with a different crew.
Hmm.
Um, but I thought it was important for Haliburton to be able to find comfort attacking other mismatches, and I think that he did that a lot in this game, just on everybody who wasn't Dort.
Hmm.
So
And he had his 3-point shot going,
yeah, which
which was the
definitely helps. He was what 4 of 8 in this game,
yeah.
which
So it
is
really was a
insane.
bad night to go drop on him because he was
Yeah,
aggressive downhill and had the shots. Like what's happening here?
yeah. Okay, next player I want to talk about is my king, TJ McConnell, who was, I think, my gosh. Okay, he wasn't the most important pacer in this game, but I think he was the second most important pacer, which is crazy because Benedict Mathurin gave me 27 off the bench. But that stretch, even in the first quarter before it went all bench or, no Hallie, was really important for keeping Indiana in this game because like OKC came out to a really hot start, and then Indiana started to catch up, but then OKC was just starting to smother them a little bit. I actually thought TJ was gonna struggle in this series. I don't think he had a good game 2. You go back to the box score and it's like, oh, he's scoring like 9 or 10 points every game. It actually isn't that different. He's like 0 to 2 turnovers every game and then like 3 to 6 assists every game. Um, but he had some like really ugly turnovers. And I thought, based on like, I think his first offensive possession of this game, it was going to be another tough TJ game after, like, similar to game two, because he got on a drive and then they were able to force a turnover on him. And he was just kind of like stuck in the paint. But immediately after that, he was just amazing. And it was a combination of offensive and defensive playmaking. So, first clip I've got here is the dump off to Siakam. This is the first pass that I saw where I was like, in another game, they steal this ball.
Yeah.
So he does the shot fake and then gets Siakam the ball anyway. And look how much attention Siakam is drawing here. And it probably like isn't great that Miles comes in from the corner, but he sort of knows TJ's probably not going to make the corner pass from where he was because he was going for the shot fake. So he's kind of crashing um for the three. But I think he crashes a little too soon because Chet's just going with him when he goes to kind of
Hmm.
help on Siakam when um Kaysen is the Siakam has the mismatch with Kaysen, right?
He had to thread the needle on that.
Yeah.
That was insane. Like,
And
not a
probably
lot of
more than
people
he
could pull that
expected
off.
to because Miles was dragging Chet into the paint,
Yeah.
right?
He placed it perfectly. That was a crazy idea, and it worked out.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Good hands from Siakam too. The next one was this touch pass to Mathurin right off of an offensive rebound situation. So this was first an offensive rebound, then they get another one, and then TJ gets it, and then I guess it's not a touch pass, but it was a very quick pass to Benedict Mathurin, who was crashing and just ready to be
It
there.
was, yeah. I mean, Caruso, what are you doing here, man? He like
I think he's thinking that they're gonna kick out to Miles, but
I think he thought they were gonna get the rebound because he was just kind of like floating back,
yeah,
and then he saw it go right to TJ, and he was too late.
yeah,
They
good
were
point.
really lazy on their box outs and
Yeah,
everything in this game, to be honest.
yeah, which is something that you don't want to see if you're a Pacers fan looking at this film because you're like, oh, they're probably gonna be better about that next game, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, let's go to the Neesmith cut. So this is the Steve Nash-esque TJ possession where, I mean, honestly, like I thought that he went behind Hartenstein when he made this pass the first time I looked at it, but it was just like, or not Hartenstein, but Chet, but it was just like right there. What is Aaron Wiggins needs to be doing a better job playing the passing lane here, but J-Dub is the one that gets back cut.
Yeah, it's Jade. I mean, you can see him react.
Yeah.
He was kind of like, "Oh shit, that was my bad."
Yeah, they're playing the gaps, but then
Oh, boom! Yeah, TJ McConnell was doing all that jazz where he almost stole the inbound pass. He did do it multiple times, but there are a lot of
he
times where
did.
he's just disrupting it. So almost happened there.
Okay, next is the kick out to Mathurin. So this was just another like TJ was just getting into the paint at will, gets into the paint, driving on Cason Wallace, who's an otherwise good isolation defender. But when you've got these small, quick guys, like they can just get past you, and he's able to beat the pressure, get all the way down the floor, and kick out to Mathurin. As Caruso has to kind of sink in to help on that. I don't know that he needed to though, because Chet was right there, and you're kind of like, look, if TJ can make this layup over Chet, you probably just live with it. Um, but that's the thing with the Thunder is when they were kind of on autopilot, and their autopilot is like, protecting the paint and all that.
Hmm.
So
It's
yeah,
convincing me more about the Nuggets needing more of that, like speed and dribble penetration. Because look at that, like you, the Thunder have, it's my clone theory where they have all these guys who can defend very similarly. But if you have other dudes who can just drive past one of them,
then
you're
they
gonna
can kind of
create.
drive past all of them. I
Yeah,
was somebody in one of my group chats has this idea that the reason that like guys like TJ and even Russ in the OKC series, like he struggled to finish and the turnovers were an issue, but he had no problem getting into the paint against that team, either to create his own shot or to create for others. Obviously, it wasn't just turnovers, like he would make kick out passes as well, and then guys would miss. That was also a thing. But he was able to get into the paint on this team, and I think part of what the Thunder are able to capitalize on a lot of the time is a lot of the ball handlers in the NBA now are bigger. And you would think that that is an advantage in some ways because you're like, oh, we have bigger players, like maybe our defense is better, this and that, whatever. But when you've got these smaller guards, they've got a shorter center of gravity. They keep the ball closer to themselves. They don't have to like dribble it further away from their bodies when they're dribbling. So it's harder to sort of pick them off also. And obviously they're quicker, so they're able to get past even good isolation defenders when they get ahead of steam. Kind of basic things that are necessary to beat pressure. So uh the next one I've got here is not actually an assist from TJ, but the Nemhard MIDI. So TJ actually gets this assist in my heart by uh driving on SGA. Will, if you could bring this one
Oh,
up.
gotcha.
Oh yeah, no problem. So he drives on SGA, just isolation, gets him all the way out. I mean, what is Shea doing here? Just flies by on a TJ McConnell layup. And look, TJ missed the layup, to be fair, but it was like open. Like, I don't know why he tripled there. He could have just gone up. But the Pacers are able to get the offensive rebound. And Nemhard
Mathurin,
makes
good for
this.
you.
Thank you, Benedict Mathurin. And he makes this midi. So that was just another good TJ play. You talked about the inbound steals. I think he had 3 steals off of inbounds in this game, and there were a couple
Jeez,
more
man.
where he was just picking off passes. He is the first bench player to have a 5 assist, 5 steals game in the NBA Finals, and he added 10 points on top of that. So that was insane. If you could play the clip of the inbound steal and layup that he got, just
What was
active
Caruso
hands,
seeing
just
here? He was just
I don't know.
tunnel
He's
vision
trying to
on
pass to
J-Dub.
yeah, just oh, is that maybe that makes more sense. I thought he was trying to pass to Shea, but J-Dub is way more open, and TJ
Yeah.
just look at that. Longer wingspan than I expected there, actually.
Huge mistake. They'll be ready for
Yeah.
that next game. Like, he won't get those inbound steals for sure. But
The other thing is the reason he's passing to J-Dub or trying to here is because the Pacers were doing a really good job of denying Shea the ball all game, and it wasn't just on inbounds, it was in the half court as well. But this is like TJ standing in front of Shea to try to deny him, but then he ends up denying both him and J-Dub just by standing there. Yes, TJ is so good at beating defenders. I believe he was this wasn't this last season, but TJ was like a top 5 isolation player in terms of efficiency last season, which was crazy. I'll look up the sets on that while we're talking and confirm. Uh, but yeah, TJ McConnell, love that guy. He was
Grace's chosen
amazing.
hero,
He is.
chosen champion. If you had someone fight for you.
Yeah, if I had somebody that I needed to, make like drive blow by someone in isolation and just, be the guy, that'd be my guy. Okay. So next we have to talk about Benedict Mathurin. And he had 27 points in this game. He was hitting everything. His pull-up game was very strong. Like he was hitting all the jumpers, but I wanted to isolate a couple of the really smart offensive scoring plays that he had because you don't get to 27 points on 12 shot attempts in 22 minutes of play, by the way.
Yeah.
uh
Scored 7 early points and then scored some really big baskets in the fourth.
Yeah. Okay, so the first one is this cut off of the Siakam double. So TJ in transition, Siakam has the mismatch on Caruso, seals, and then Mathurin is cutting off of who is that, Will?
Wiggins.
Aaron Wiggins. And people ask why Daigneault doesn't play him more. I think Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe were big problems for OKC in this game. Then again, and that's crazy because I don't think OKC as a team was playing that well defensively in this game, but I don't think those guys helped.
Isaiah Joe had a shot going, but Wiggins didn't have much to
Right.
offer in this
I think
game.
Isaiah Joe was an even bigger problem, actually,
On
despite the
defense?
shot going. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. But that was good. He's notices that his defender is ignoring him or distracted and just goes right off the cut. And they're able to make that pass. And he hits what should have been, in my opinion, and one over SGA at the rim. Okay, another and one, a drive on J-Dub. So so he bumps Case and Walls off the screen, and then J-Dub tries to recover to him, and Mathurin's he's just a really skilled player. Like, this is a shot where it doesn't always go in, but you don't look at it and think, "Oh god, I can't believe he's taking that shot." Like, this isn't his bag.
Also, what is J-Dub
Yeah.
doing right here? Like, why does he run past Obi
I
Toppin?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's
That's
like,
a good question.
it's
Is that
very
to
weird.
keep Obi from popping out to the other side?
Could be, but
That's weird.
or
You're
also you're like
right.
trying to play a drive, but like Obi Toppin doesn't have to work to flip. Like, because technically with J-Dub on that side, you'd be like, oh, this is a flip screen situation, but he doesn't even need to do that because it's already set up. And now he's like, really
Yeah.
has to close out on Mathurin.
Is this like an extreme example of what we talked about in the first clip with the travel clip with SGA where but it's obviously the other team on defense here? Is that what was happening?
Wait, what
Where
do you
they're
mean?
kind of not he was trying to, like, not veer switch, but create an opportunity to look like he was veer switching, but really just
I don't really know
recover
where he
back
was
to
going.
this was confusing. This is just bad defense from the Thunder, but he took advantage of it. Those are the opportunities you need to capitalize on to
Yeah.
make, an impact in these kinds of games. And the last one is an and one off a pick and roll over J-Dub, gets him on his hip, has a nice little hesitation and goes for the finger roll layup at the rim over iHeart. Good screen
Yeah.
by Siakam also
And good
to
roll because iHeart had to,
he
respect
hits
that.
his pistol because of Caruso's dig, and he's still able to, create something here. So that was really
Impressive.
good. I was really like, man, Mathurin is playing too well for him to be a sort of buy low candidate for Denver right now.
Damn.
But I've been wanting him for
He's
us.
popping off at just the wrong time for us.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay, so the last segment that I want to talk about on the Pacers offense is just picking on the Thunder. Um, it didn't help that the Thunder were not on their best defensive game, either energy-wise or with their execution. But Indiana was able to massively capitalize on that. Isaiah Joe played just how many minutes? 4 minutes in this game. And I compiled 4 clips of possessions where he like what he was doing directly led to points for Indiana. I was listening to the Uncontested Pod, which is a Thunder podcast after the game, and they were not pleased with his game. They said he made his 2 threes, and I think he still gave up more points on the other end in 4 minutes of play again, right? Like, uh, so we're gonna ignore that. That was an issue. Um, so let's actually first go to the Nemhard 3 because this was on Kenrich Williams, who gets blown by Obi Toppin and then puts everybody, including Isaiah Joe, in a bad position with respect to trying to recover to shooters here. So Isaiah Joe has to play too. Now he's like, okay, well, I'm obviously gonna try to take Hallie. Ball makes it to Hallie, but then Hallie's able to easily pass to Nemhard. So maybe the issue here is like Isaiah Joe should have played that
Well,
gap. He was trying to play the passing gap between Obi and Hallie, but then left
Isaiah Joe thought Hallie had already relocated to the corner,
oh, I see. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he was like right there, but he wasn't there, so Toppin could just pass to the wing instead.
Yeah. And obviously this starts with Kenrich Williams being blown by, and he ultimately is the one left to fake contest that Nemhard 3. He can't play in this series. Like, the game is just moving way too fast for him. I think he and Thomas Bryant should not be playing minutes in this series, but the Indiana doesn't have anybody besides Thomas Bryant to play as like a center off the bench besides Tony Bradley. We'll see how deep we get into the series before Thomas Bryant is just an outright DNP, but I think he played 14
Yeah.
seconds in the first half of this game, and then he played 3 minutes total. So Carlisle is just like, I just got to get Miles like 2 minutes of air, and then you're off the floor. But this is what happens in the playoffs. It doesn't matter. Like it does matter how deep you are as a team, but it also eventually the players that can't play in a series will not be playing in a series unless you're the Denver Nuggets and they have literally nobody else. Oh yeah, we won't go into that. The next one is this Mathurin cutting layup. So we're in transition, and Tyrese Haliburton is able to make this pass. And this was another one where, do you blame Kenrich more or Isaiah Joe more for not stopping the ball sooner? Because Kenrich is only standing where he's standing because Isaiah Joe hadn't picked up the ball yet. And then eventually isn't able to recover to Obi, and that's how you get to the Mathurin cutting layup.
Is that Kenrich or is that AJ Mitchell? Oh no, that is
34?
Kenrich.
No, that's definitely
Yeah.
AJ Mitchell is not getting any more rotation minutes after the first half of game
Yeah,
one. I think Daigneault learned his
I
lesson in
definitely
that.
blame Kenrich because that allows Obi Toppin to cut right into the paint, and then everything breaks down from there, and everyone can crash.
You blame him more than Isaiah Joe?
Yeah, because he's supposed to stop Well, I don't know who was supposed to stop Haliburton.
Well, I think Isaiah Joe is supposed to stop Haliburton, which is why he recovers to Haliburton. If he wasn't, he would have just recovered to Obi.
Yeah, but Williams is playing Haliburton too, so they're both on.
Well, I know. That's what I'm saying. He's doing that because Isaiah Joe had not yet stopped Haliburton.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. But you could say,
I think he had plenty of time to get there.
He's got Hallie there. I can start recovering now. But he doesn't really. Like, Isaiah Joe never actually gets in front of Haliburton on this
They
possession.
either needed to communicate, and Kenrich should have said, like, I got ball or I can stop it, and then Joe could have just taken top in. I don't know what
we can blame both.
was. Yeah.
Let's blame both. So yeah, that was an issue. And this is the other thing with like communication. It's what you talk about when you talk about shortening the rotation and paring it down to your best players at all, like you trust to like communicate and whatever. Even if they make mistakes, like everybody knows exactly what happened on that possession and they can make sure it doesn't happen again. Right. So yeah, there's a reason guys like this don't play. There's nothing wrong with these players, but like when you're you're the nth man off the bench, like the chemistry and consistent communication isn't always there. Okay. So the next one was, this is a shot that SGA actually blocks, so it doesn't lead to points. But Isaiah Joe gets ISO'd by TJ, and then Ben Shepherd almost gets a layup out of it. And I believe but the Pacers do score here afterward because SGA goes out of bounds after he gets the ball, and then the Pacers get the ball back. And the next possession happens, which is like if you could go to the TJ ISOing Isaiah Joe for the last bucket of the half. This is after the Pacers get the ball back here. And do comfortable, and you go. Which is like, it's Isaiah Joe didn't play bad defense here, but also if like, I mean, even if it was Case and Wallace, he probably just gets that stop there as a better isolation defender. Trying to guard TJ from a standstill. But Daigneault put Isaiah Joe in at the end of the half again for offense. So I thought he only had one stint in this game because he only played like 4 minutes, but he actually went in for two separate like 1 3-minute stint and 1 minute stint in the first half, which was an interesting choice.
Yeah, it was a weird defensive game for OKC. Snoozer says it's funny we're even debating whose fault it is not picking up Hallie at half court.
I know.
It's like, what are you guys doing?
Well, you don't have to pick up Hallie, but you have to stop the ball. Like in transition, you have to get in front of the ball. Isaiah Joe was never like in Hallie's path.
But it's even more important to get in front of Hallie in transition.
Sure.
To stop
The
ball.
yeah. All right. So the next one I've got here is a Miles corner three. So this is not Isaiah Joe anymore. It's just generally the Thunder being picked on. So here you've got Miles gets the seal on Haliburton in transition, and then they try to scram switch quickly with iHeart.
Oh, he could have thrown that alley oop then. He probably didn't know
Yeah.
they were going to scram switch, but if he threw that pass, it would have been open for the alley oop to Obi.
Yeah, because SGA was kind of like, okay, so where am I going next? And
There's
I guess
no
he's trying
way
to communicate with
he
Wiggins.
even like turns away from the ball. He wouldn't have even
Yeah.
seen the pass coming, but whatever.
Yeah. I think he thought he was trying to recover to Shepard.
Hey, a three's better than a two, so it worked out.
As long as they make it.
Yeah. We had a viewer comment that I want to bring up for this. Miles Turner was horrendous for 3 quarters, and then, well, this was in the first quarter, but
I agree with
then
that.
he woke up and was amazing
I
guarding
think
Chet.
he was still good defensively in just the second half generally, but this is still a tough offensive series for Miles Turner. His jump shot is largely not going. He did make some big buckets both in this game and in game 1 in the fourth quarter, but offensively it has not been there. And then I think in the first halves in all these games defensively, feel like Chet's eating his lunch. But then he's just completely shutting off his water at the end of these games. It's really interesting. Not just the end, but the whole second halves.
If
He's just been really turning it up
if Miles
defensively.
does have his three going though, it's a huge factor to help the
Right,
Pacers
but he
stay in
hasn't
this.
had it going. So
Yeah, he just has it like at the
I'm not
end of
saying not
games
to
or
play him.
something.
Like I think he's a really important player for them. And again, I think he's the one who's done the best job on Chet.
Yeah, and I
But
know
it
you have.
hasn't been like a standout Miles Turner series
Do
in
you
that
have
way.
some Miles Turner defensive clips? Because he had some good ones at the end of the game. He had like
I
a
do
block
not.
on the Chet three.
There was the block on the Chet 3 is the one that stands out in my mind, but I was
Yeah,
just gonna
nah, it's all
talk
good.
about
We just
Miles
mentioned
being
it
great.
now, so there you go.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the Ben Shepherd driving layup here. So attacking off the catch. SGA just kind of loses him a bit off the ball. Does a good relocation from Ben Shepherd. But they're just trying to involve SGA in all these actions. I think SGA was over helping here, if I'm being honest, on Haliburton's drive. Uh because you kind of
Yeah,
figure J-Dub or Dort could do a better
yeah. Why
job in
is
that
he
low man
helping from
position.
there?
I think it's just like SGA is the free safety. Ben Shepherd is somebody we ignore. Ben Shepherd
Right.
was able to punish that on this possession.
That's true. And I mean, that's what the Thunder do. And that's kind
Yeah.
of what's made their defense so special and also unpredictable because they help from weird spots you wouldn't think. Like, who helps, one pass away like that?
Yeah. And
But they did.
this wasn't even a great job from Hal or great drive from
Yeah.
Haliburton. And SGA is able to cut it off and force like an awkward pass, but gets out of position to defend the closeout.
That plays a good example of how different the Thunder's defense felt, where just like the openings are there. Like, when have they ever looked that like permeable, to use a lack of a better word, where you can just get in
No,
there?
that's a great word actually. Well, I think that's a great word for what they were. I've heard porous. I like permeable as
Porous.
well. These are
Yes.
words that you can use to describe cell
Scien-
membranes as
Scientific
well.
words for Grace.
Yeah. Okay. We're not going to talk about science.
No more
Done with that.
science.
All right, let's go to the Mathurin 3. So they get SGA again in this pick and roll action, just off an Obi Toppin screen. SGA is playing way off of him. I think he's just like, Chet, could you take him? Like, and I'll just whatever here. And then Ben's like, I can just pull up for this open
It's
3.
like
And he made it.
this isn't even drop, like he's technically up to touch, but he's like, Chet has long arms, so even though he's like, I'm up here, he's still far away, and the shot's wide open. So
Right. And Chet
some
has to play it a
laziness.
little bit further off because SGA hasn't recovered
Yeah,
well.
we
Like
can
I don't
look.
know. I thought this was just a kind of lazy defense from SGA. Like he was not trying to fight over the screen. Like you saw him like
Yeah,
take a
there's
rest
nothing,
here.
absolutely nothing there.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
why I really did want to see how he was defensively in another late close game to see how
Yeah.
much effort there would be or not.
And it wasn't like in the last game, I don't think it was effort. I think he was just well, it was effort, but I think he was tired. In this game, you could say it was effort because you could see this with him and the entire OKC team the entire game.
Yeah.
Um, in addition to fatigue, which could contribute to why the energy was as low as it was. Everybody talks about how the Pacers really tire you out with their style of play. Like they were really pressing the transition button a lot in this game and doing a better job of not forcing things that weren't there, but capitalizing on the opportunities that they did get. As we talked about in our last show, like missing out on transition opportunities was a big problem for them in game 2. Um let's go to the Haliburton missed corner 3. So on this possession, you get Haliburton in the corner, and then SGA sort of flies by, stands around. SGA, or then Haliburton's just able to get his rebound. Nemhard ends up getting the offensive rebound
Yeah, and he gets fouled.
here, and then he gets fouled on that reset, and then he ends up making a midi on the next possession. But yeah, it was just like
At least Shea got a
this
good
reminds me of
contest.
those Jamal corner contests. Actually,
Yeah.
no, Jamal tends to not close out all the way, I think, which prevents this kind of thing, but also they make the threes. But SJ, like, this is one of the reasons I hate flyby contests as like if it's your general principle, like it's one thing if it's like end of clock, whatever. Um, if it happens to be on the scouting report that this guy doesn't do well, it's flyby contest, that's different. But uh if you do it too much, like it's really easy to get caught scrambling on the backside of that, because the guy can just fly in for their own offensive rebound. And yeah. So I do have a couple of clips that concerned me if I'm the Pacers. And they all have to do with J Dub being really, really good in this game as a driver. Um, I think that he has been looking a lot more under control ever since maybe the back half of the Wolves series, which was a short series, so a couple games on the back half of that series. I thought his drives in our series, even when he was making shots, were incredibly like looked wildly out of control in terms of like body control and just like does he know what spot he's trying to get to. And in addition to that, he wasn't necessarily always getting all the way to the rim. Now he did hit some pull-up jumpers in this game, but I thought his driving game getting all the way downhill or like almost all the way downhill was a lot more impressive. Um, and so okay, let's start with the attacking Benedict Mathurin. So he gets a high screen on Mathurin in transition and kind of gets the switch onto Miles Turner and is able to just attack all the way downhill. Gets this
Oh,
and
and
one.
one. Yeah.
Um, and he looked incredibly comfortable doing this kind of thing all game. The
That's
next one
something they could
oh, go
do
ahead.
all the time. I mean, attacking
Yeah.
him, he can cook Miles Turner every time if he decided to.
I do think that Indiana would adjust their defense on him a bit if they thought that he was gonna do
Right.
this more consistently, but I don't
And
know that they have a good answer for it.
and how good is OKC's offense at like really forcing that switch? Are they able to like I like
Yeah.
doubt that they're able to like force that every time, but
Yeah, like, if that's not Mathurin there, who isn't, like, a great screen navigator, maybe doesn't have the best awareness, but I think maybe Miles should have warned him about that screen coming. It did come kinda quick, like, I don't I don't think that the Pacers necessarily did anything super wrong there, like, that's a semi-transition sort of scramble situation, you're just trying to get in front of the guy, and Miles does take him on the switch, and then he thinks Mathurin is recovering back, and he's like, "Okay, fine, I'll take him," and then it results in this. And this next one, the driving layup over Miles Turner. Again, we've got a semi-transition situation, and he's just ready to attack, gets all the way downhill. Um, so that's,
there it is again. And like they didn't even have to do any work. It was just like a cross match
Yep,
type of situation. So
yep,
J-Dub's got to be aggressive there, and yeah, he was.
and he was, yeah. The next is the isolation drive on Mathurin. I think he gets all the way downhill on this one as well. This is again semi-transition, right? Like he's ready to attack as soon as the possession starts. Gets all the way downhill, layup on Mathurin here.
Yeah, that's just
Um,
good play by J-Dub
yeah.
because Mathurin's doing
The
pretty
his
good.
ability to stop sort of mid-drive and change he changed hands there, right? And change direction a bit. I think he just catches a mid to bad defender off guard, which is what you need to do is capitalize on those opportunities, and that's what Jada was doing in this game. Um, Okay, the last one I've got here is the floater over Neesmith, or like a runner. So kind of bumps him off with a Caruso screen and then rejects on the other end and gets almost all the way downhill. He did this to Neesmith twice in this game, by the way, twice late. He seems to enjoy the Neesmith matchup. So he also hit a pull up three over Neesmith, I think, to close the third quarter. Were those guys? No, I don't know which draft class Aaron Neesmith was in. They were not in the same draft class because J-Dub was in the same class as Peyton and Christian. All right. So the hope here, and I'm not saying this is the answer, but there was another possession where J-Dub gets all the way downhill and the Pacers are able to get a stop. Gets all the way downhill again on Neesmith and pick and roll. Obi Toppin is playing him pick and roll, and he's able to get the block here. And this was a huge stop. So at this point, you're like, okay, I can cut the game back down to 2 possessions. But Indiana is able to get the stop. And I think that
Yeah,
was
this was important too. It's
huge.
4 minutes. It's clutch. Well, they're up 7, but it's if they make this, it's clutch time. I like that Toppin kind of backed off a little bit, like ready to play that drive. Like he knows he's going to do it. And if Neesmith does get caught, he's somewhat in position, and he was, and you can get the trail block there. Kind of AG-esque.
It was like yeah, I guess. I don't know. OB jumps pretty high now. Yes. I think OB jumps higher than AG now. Maybe always did. But yeah, I think that's going to be an issue for Indiana if J-Dub's just like, oh, I could just keep pressing this button over and over again. That's what the playoffs are about, right? Like you find those weak points and you just keep pressing them until the other team shows that they can stop you. So that's definitely a point of concern. Is there anything else you wanted to say about this game before we talk about predictions?
No, let's get into it because I want to know your thoughts.
So game 4 is tonight. And after watching the Florida Panthers blow a game to the Edmonton Oilers after going up 2-1 in the series, and taking home court advantage, just coughing it back up in game 4 last night, I am not feeling particularly optimistic. And honestly, going back in the film of this game, I was just like, yes, Indiana did a lot of good things. And we talked about them. I do not want to take that away from them whatsoever. But there is so much that OKC could clean up and that I expect them to clean up, particularly defensively. I think if Indiana wins game 4, it's going to be because their defense shows up again and they're able to pull out something close. So I think that it's going to be a nastier game for them offensively. And it's really just about, can they keep up that same defensive intensity and execution over OKC that they did after the first 6 minutes of game 3?
Man, it pains me to say because I hate OKC, but I kept waiting for a moment in the Nuggets series where some amount of pressure might get to them. Their youth might show, the inexperience might show.
I mean, it did show. Like game 4 was a terrible game for both teams. It's just they were less bad than we were.
Yeah.
And
but it's just, it didn't happen enough. And most of the times where we had an opportunity to
game 5 also
take control of the series, they did respond in some way with either like a timely shot or steal, or, they were just able to keep up the intensity and at least keep up the level of execution to win the series ultimately. And so here we are in game 4. The question is being put to them again, where they do have to come out and clean up the rebounding, their box outs, their help, their effort on screens, all that jazz that we know that they can do. And it's just, I do wonder if, because it's the NBA Finals and it's like, this is like the most pressure they've ever felt in their careers, I would guess. And are they going to respond, or are they going to kind of crack under the pressure? I kind of doubt that they crack because they haven't yet, and they're just like good, and someone on that team is going to step up because they have so much talent. But it could happen, and I want to see if the Pacers can muster that defensive effort again, because I kind of did feel like it was close and Pacers were playing their ass off the whole game, in game 3, and I was like, they have to do all this just to be tied with OKC. So
I mean, but
it's a little bit worried.
we already knew that that would have to be the case, though. Like, there's a reason OKC won
Well,
68 games this season, right? There's a reason they have the best point differential in NBA history. They have the margin for error.
mhm.
They have the margin to have, uh, Chet having a 20. What is this, a 20-10 game? And it was a bad game for Chet, just impact wise. Like, everyone,
Yeah,
I think, agrees with that, despite the box score.
yeah.
Um,
He's gonna like go back and forth. Game 1 was bad, game 2 good, game 3 bad. I think game 4
sure,
likely good.
yeah. But my my point is just if the Pacers are gonna win this, they're gonna have to take it. I don't see OKC giving this series away. Like they might have like bad games, but they have enough margin for error that they can have a mid game. Like I thought at game 2 was like a mid OKC game. It just happened to be like, okay, Aaron Wiggins goes off. And the Pacers have like a terrible game.
Yeah.
Um
And it was like a bench
yeah.
thing where it was like the bench got crushed in game 2, and I could tell that they were like, we have to step up. And in game 3 it showed, and I think OKC bench will do the same thing where they're gonna be motivated,
I
sadly.
don't know. It's not just motivation, like they actually have to execute. But I think defensively, OKC has a lot of room for improvement, and I expect that improvement. Offensively, they obviously have room for improvement, but I don't necessarily expect it. With the Pacers, I think their offense is going to be worse, but their defense could be even better, I think, than in game 3.
Really?
Yeah. And it was pretty good in game 3. So I think that game 4 is going to be nasty. I don't think this is going to be like game 4 in the Wolf series.
They
Um,
need to keep fouling
yeah.
and being like not giving a shit, I think. Because
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, not too much,
Yeah,
but
not
yeah,
too much.
just be aggressive. Like just play the best defense that you played all playoffs, basically, which is what I think game 3 was, but they could be even better than that. But I do expect OKC to win. Can Indiana win another game on the road in this series? Yeah, absolutely. They've done that
They're a
in
good road team.
they've been a great road team this playoffs. They've barely lost. They lost 2 games in the first 2 series, and then in the second series they lost one road game, which was game 5 against the Knicks, right? Uh OKC has lost more road games because they've been a worse road team. Um but they've won. I think both teams have like lost the same number of games before the finals, but OKC was a better home team by like a game. So it was whatever. Uh I will say up until this point, the Pacers are 3-0 in game 4s and
Mm,
the Thunder are 3-0 in game 4s.
shit.
So we're going to see something's got to give.
Yeah. I expect OKC probably is going to win. They're just too good. And I think SGA and J-Dub and I think Caruso and Chet are going to like shoot the lights out because they're pissed that they lost the last game.
I don't think that's how shooting works. I don't
I
think you
do.
just shoot better because you're pissed off.
I think that.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think Caruso especially, like he has like an off night and then he's like hitting everything.
I thought what was his I didn't notice him like bricking a lot in this game. He just wasn't
He
like a
maybe not taken a
flamethrower.
lot,
He was
but
2 of 2 from 3 in this
oh
game. So,
Jesus.
I mean, that was
Okay.
whatever. I think that the bigger issue is that the Pacer starters need to win their minutes because they had been in this series before this game 3 and
Yeah. I mean,
game
if you
3 they did not. Like this was the TJ and Ben
you
Mathurin
get
game, which is
lucky
the
in that,
other, point of concern if you're a Pacers fan.
I would not rely on the bench trying to win the games for you.
Yeah.
You gotta really take it to OKC when you can. You have your best players out there and give them your best punch, and hopefully that means Miles Turner being more consistent on offense.
Yeah, Miles
Because
Turner, like, making some threes would have completely changed the complexion of this series, I think. Not just because of the points, but what it opens up for them.
yeah, it was funny because when I saw the score and that the Pacers won, and I was thinking about my agendas in terms of how much more important offense is than defense. And I thought there could be a game where the Pacers just shoot the lights out and like despite OKC playing as good as they can, they could just win a game off that. But
Mm,
then I watched the game and it was like just the Pacers defense was the story, I felt like. And I was like, oh well, that's funny because the Pacers are the offensive team theoretically, but they played really
Yeah.
good defense, and
We
they
haven't
get
seen
respect
the
for that.
game for OKC where they play really well and lose, right?
Yeah, that's true. Except
Uh,
maybe
it maybe would have
game one
been
of
game
Nuggets
4
and
against the
Pacers.
Wolves, but they were able to pull that out, and I that game was never really in doubt for me. Uh,
I feel like game one Nuggets and Pacers, they like played well, but then just like didn't execute late and lost the game.
yeah, that was probably it, game 1,
Yeah.
and I think Pacers more so because in the Nuggets, series, I don't think they guarded Jokic well, like, that's why the
Mm,
Nuggets were even in that game is
in
because
that
Jokic went
first
for
game.
40, and,
Because then they quickly
yeah.
did start guarding him well, or at
Yeah.
least as well as anyone can.
That was more of a feel out game. I feel like game 1 in this series, OKC did play real like, they were, like, in firm control the entire game.
Hmm.
It had the same beats as our game 1, but I felt like OKC played better in this one and lost anyway. So the Pacers already got that game, so they need to start playing well,
Yeah.
to finish this out.
I have one question for you though.
Yep.
Did you think OKC had any coaching issues in terms of
In this
rotations,
game
double big lineups? Should have done something
I
different with it.
I'm not like one of these double big truthers when it comes to this particular series. Like I think Daigneault is well within his rights to think I don't want to play double big against the Pacers. It it could give him an edge. And everyone's pointing to this stat where what is it? They're the Thunder are +7 in 10 minutes of Holmgren and Ihart on the floor together in the series. And I'm like, guys, it's OKC. +7 in 10 minutes is like is like almost a neutral net rating compared to what their other lineups are able to do. And I've also heard this take that Daigneault changing the starting lineup for this series was like admitting that they're the worst team because they were adjusting to Indiana like ahead or not admitting, but like kind of that psychology. I disagree with that entirely because I think uh OKC's best punch all playoffs has been their single big looks. Their
Yeah,
double
I
big looks
agree.
haven't been that good. Like if you look at the lineup data, they've just been like meh.
I just think Chet is
Yeah.
better as the true five out there.
That too, like especially offensively. Now he didn't do too well after the first quarter of game 3, but he was great in game 2.
Hmm.
And he actually had moments early in game 1, which is why I thought Miles Turner would struggle against him defensively, but then has it in, again, the second halves of these games. But in terms of like rotation decisions, not so much. There are a few things like why did he go centerless at the end of game 1? That did not make sense to me. Like, you want your best players out there even if they're not playing well. Like, Chet Holmgren not playing well is gonna be better than who did he put out there? Caruso or Cason Wallace at center? I don't know.
Yeah, that was bad.
Um, and playing AJ Mitchell rotation minutes in the NBA finals, like, don't put a rookie on the floor.
Hmm.
Just don't do it. There's no reason for it. When you like last year, Cason Wallace was a rotation player in their playoff rotation. So he was a lottery pick who was a really good defender, and he was the best player that they could be playing in those minutes. I do think that Dagnall gets a little too cute sometimes with the Kenrich Williams and Isaiah Joe stuff. Like if Isaiah Joe is a guy that you only feel comfortable playing 4 minutes, he probably shouldn't be playing. And that's how I feel about Thomas Bryant too. So that's like a thing with Carlisle, but at least with the Pacers, you could say like they don't have anybody else that they can use to spell Miles Turner. Maybe
Yeah,
you could say Carlisle could just go small in those minutes, whatever. But Dagnall doesn't have to play AJ Mitchell or Kenrich Williams. He doesn't, right? Um, yeah, so I think that is a thing. But other than that,
yeah,
no, not really. I think it's really been execution in all these games for both teams, honestly. I think Carlisle is a good coach with the Pacers, and there are some things that they've done schematically in the first couple of these games. But a lot of the improvements that I've seen in Indiana as the series has gone on have been execution. Like Tyrese Haliburton talked about it between games 2 and game 3. He's like, we were doing all the same stuff and trying to play like at the level and whatever, but my positioning was really bad. So I wanted to improve my positioning in those instances to try to cut off Shea's drives enough to help the other guy recover. And he definitely did that in game 3. And I think that those kinds of tweaks have been the most impactful in the series. We're going to see in game 4. If OKC wins and wins comfortably, it's going to be because they executed better on defense. Like, so many of the offensive clips we watched of the Pacers today were like, not why did OKC do this, even though we had a couple of questions like the drop and things like that, but there were ways that they could have executed those coverages better.
Yeah.
Which is vigilance and, effort. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the coaching critiques are a little overblown, but there are some things people can point to. But I do feel like every time they lose, it's always like, well, Daigneault got cute again. And it's like, we just showed clear examples, like you said, of like some coverages that were questionable. We didn't even know what they were doing on some of them. And they'll watch the film and probably fix some of that. They won't be turning the ball over on inbounds passes under the basket, things like that.
Like, you can't blame Daigneault for 5 steals from TJ McConnell. Like, that's not. And the margin of the game was like Indiana won comfortably, but it was all in the clutch, and they won by 9, right? So if you don't give TJ McConnell 3 inbound steals, that's 6 points right there. And probably not just that, you score there maybe. So who knows what the swing is. It's it's a whole thing. I think coaching is important, especially in the playoffs, but I think it does get overblown, especially compared to the thing with the playoffs is so much of it, as much as our show has been and was kind of born out of this like desire to want to talk X's and O's and all that, so much about the playoffs is about individual performance, and you could say team performance in terms of like operating on a string and execution more so than what are they doing.
That's what Adelman said.
Yeah.
He wants better execution.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have come to the end of our show. And if you've made it this far, we really appreciate you guys. We don't appreciate you if you haven't made it this far, but it doesn't matter because you haven't made it this far. If you like our content, please remember to click the like button and also hit the subscribe button. We're still trying to hit that 1,000 sub mark before the end of the playoffs. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our content, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. We're on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Music. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, etc. All our social links are in the description. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks. Thank you, Florida Panthers. It would be fun if the Pacers won the finals because it would mean the Thunder lost the finals. Losing can also be fun if it's not your team.
Yes.